Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Switched On. We made it to episode 2. That's officially a thing now. We're not canceled. I'm your host Ben Lamoreux, and as I mentioned last week, we want to keep things fresh, so we're going to be rotating guests out and featuring a lot of different Gamnesia staff week to week. And so today we've got two all-new guests. Begrudgingly, I have agreed to introduce this first guest as Tom Ado.
Howdy. Really, I am Stephen Rollins.
And then we also have Adam with us today.
Shouldn't it be Peach Owser instead of Peachette?
It probably should, but we can get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
So Steve and Adam have both been writing for us for a long time, doing news and editorials and everything. So welcome them to the show, everybody.
I'm glad to be here.
Good to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, I guess. Last week we focused exclusively on the latest Nintendo Direct, since it was packed with just tons of stories. This week we're going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to start off with some news coverage, and then later we'll switch to a conversation about the pros and cons of Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee. So for this week at least, we're going to kind of follow the Nintendo Week format of a news section and then a more freeform discussion section. And yeah, like I said, we're gonna dive into Pokemon Let's Go, Pikachu, and Eevee later. I think there's a lot to talk about there, and we all have different viewpoints. But for now, we're going to start with Pokemon news, because we had a lot of that, too, the last couple of weeks. So, do either of you guys play Pokemon Go much?
I used to, not so much anymore. I probably haven't played it in about a year and a half, at the very least.
I played it a lot when it first came out, and I recently tried to play it for a bit, went out on a walk, and I ran out of Pokeballs and decided I didn't want to pay for more.
That's fair. Thankfully I don't live too far away from the downtown area of my town, and there's just Pokestops on every corner there, so I'll just late at night when no one's around, I'll go for a walk and just hit them all up and get free Pokeballs for days. But yeah, if you don't have access to a bunch of nearby stops, that can be a bit of an issue. I personally didn't start playing when it first launched. I just got into it a few months ago. But right now, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in Pokemon Go with this new Meltan creature. Have you guys seen much about this?
Yeah, what in Arceus' name is that?
So yeah, it started popping up all over the place, and then people would catch it, and it just turns into a Ditto. And if you've seen the creature, it's got kind of a gelatinous body that looks like a Ditto, but then it has a metal industrial nut for a head and an eye. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure what to make of this at first. I really liked the fan theory sort of that Ditto was attempting to evolve into something and didn't quite remember it, and so it was it was coming up with a sort of half-correct look at a new Pokemon. But it seems like that actually is what this new Pokemon Meltan's going to look like, and it's actually a really ancient mystical Pokemon, at least according to Professor Oak.
It's very interesting to see this, because when it first started popping up, I thought sort of along the lines of other people, thinking that this was released by mistake and that people weren't supposed to see this. So when it was revealed and they did a sort of official reveal with Professor Willow and Professor Oak, I went, oh, no, this was on purpose the whole time. That's crazy. And I thought it was a really great way to introduce brand new Pokemon. Never seen it done like that before.
Yeah, there's still a lot of people thinking that Niantic and the Pokemon Company are just kind of doing damage control, but they would have had to have thrown together a pretty decent quality trailer really, really quick if that was just damage control. So yeah. I'm more of the opinion that this was just a really weird viral marketing campaign, and it caught the internet by storm, so did its job.
Totally. We know it's Steel-type now, right?
Yeah, it's Steel-type, and apparently it can use electric moves, too. They're calling it a mystical Pokemon, which means it won't evolve, so I guess it'll just continue to be mono Steel-type, but yeah, in its description, they talk about its electricity power, too. And its body is supposed to be made out of liquid metal, so yeah, it's interesting. I don't know what to make of the design. It's kind of cute in a really weird, dorky way.
I think one of my favorite parts about the design is, since it can use electricity, for its tail, they kind of gave it a little stripped wire feel, which I thought was a really nice little twist.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty neat. I like that.
Yeah, so we know that this thing is going to be appearing in the upcoming Pokemon Let's Go games, And because it's defined as a mystical Pokemon, that typically means that it won't be something you can acquire in-game through normal means. It'll be something that'll be, dished out as like a special event or something. So we don't know what that's going to be exactly, but we do know it's coming at some point to the upcoming Switch games.
So,
which, oddly enough, I guess we don't really know for sure if or when it's coming to Pokemon Go, like, for real and not just as a Ditto, but presumably that's got to be on the way, too.
Right.
Well, I know shortly after this was revealed, the Pokemon Twitter account actually revealed that, or confirmed that Pokemon Go is going to be the key to unlocking it. So I'm wondering if it's going to be something like you catch it and go and then transfer it over.
That actually makes a lot of
sense. Be an interesting way to do it.
We know, like, you'll be able to bring your Mew over from the Pokeball, which we might talk about that a little later. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some mystical or legendary Pokemon that you can only get in Let's Go via Go connectivity. So that would make a lot of sense. I just pulled up the description here. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, the other thing kind of along that line is, like, all the way back in May or whenever Let's Go was first revealed, the end of that trailer, the Pokemon Company, like, hinted at something very unique, something that we had never seen before, and given this news about Meltan, I'm wondering if maybe that could be it.
Yeah, they had said that Let's Go was going to have, like, a new Pokemon, and the very most common theory, I would say, everyone was thinking it was going to be a new Eeveelution, right? Because, Eevee's one of the main sort of flagship characters of these two games, so it would make sense. And there was even, like, a lot of rumors going around that it was going to be a flying type, I think. But, yeah, I don't think anyone was expecting a Ditto/Industrial Nut to be the mystery Pokemon. So, yeah, I pulled up its official description. And it says, most of Meltan's body is made from liquid metal, and its shape is very fluid. It can use its liquid arms and legs to corrode metal and absorb it into its own body. Meltan generates electricity using the metal it absorbs from outside sources. It uses this electricity as an energy source, and also as an attack that can be fired from its eye. Clearly a curious Pokemon, Meltan is very expressive and shows an interest in all kinds of things. So I have to still wonder if it might be connected to Ditto in some way. I mean, it's very weird that they just had, like, thousands of Dittos across the world transform into this thing at once, and also that its body looks so similar to a Ditto's, even if we know it to be liquid metal. So yeah, I'm not sure if there's going to be a connection there, and possibly even a connection with Mew, since that's the only other Pokemon that can use Transform. And since we know that Mew is already going to sort of play a role in Go to Let's Go connectivity. But yeah, there's still a whole lot of mystery here. Right now, all we have is a very confusing Industrial Nut. And we might get a little more news about that this weekend, because there's going to be more Pokemon news on the Japanese show. I believe it's Pokenchi, the Pokemon House. So that'll be airing. It's Sunday morning in Japan, but in the U.S. that's going to be like Saturday afternoon or evening, depending on your time zone. And with a lot of these Pokenchi things, a lot of times Game Freak or the Pokemon Company will do like an official trailer drop right beforehand, and then what you actually get on the show is more of like a recap. But it's possible they could just, be talking about Meltan or even something new altogether. So that's something to look forward to this weekend. Game Freak is continuing to keep like a steady flow of Pokemon news every single week.
I think it's cool that Game Freak is actually doing something a little bit new with this time around. Like, they're not reserving new Pokemon for the next generation of hardcore RPG Pokemon games. Mm-hmm. They're going for what is basically a sort of, call it a spin-off, almost. It's kind of like a spin-off game, in a way.
Yeah, that's fair, like a mobile spin-off.
Yeah. So it's very interesting that they're kind of going for that approach instead of waiting for what I'm assuming is going to be Gen 8 next year.
Yeah. Well, and, it makes a lot of sense considering, how many hundreds of millions of people have downloaded it. Like, you can probably get the message out faster by just dropping the thing into Pokemon Go than to, dropping it on your Facebook or your Twitter or whatever.
Totally.
So.
Yeah.
All right. And then also, if you're looking to find out information outside of Meltan, Pokemon producer Junichi Masuda is going to be answering questions from fans soon. Nintendo of Australia and New Zealand are setting up an interview. They actually didn't say what day it's going to be, but you can go to the Nintendo AU-NZ Twitter account right now, and you can submit questions for Junichi Masuda and Kensaku Nabana, who is, I believe, an artist for Pokemon, and they're going to be answering questions about Let's Go. So if you got something, take it straight to the top. All right, so moving on from Pokemon news, the other big thing that's been going on recently is obviously Nintendo Switch Online launched. When we released our first episode of Switched On, it was still upcoming. I think it launched like a day after we went live with the episode. So now we've all kind of had a chance to try out the service and, try out the library of NES games and so on and so forth. And we've also gotten a little more clarification on some of the features. So let's start. I'll kick it to you, Steven. What are your thoughts on Nintendo Switch Online so far?
So I have not subscribed yet. I have currently only done the 7-day trial. And that was solely because the Dark Souls network test required it. And so I downloaded it for that. Did the network test, played around with some of the NES games that come as part of that, I guess. I'm not really a fan too much, and this is coming from someone who repeatedly pays for Xbox Live. And there's just not enough there for me personally to justify a continued subscription. I didn't care too much for the selection of games that they had. I don't own a lot of online Nintendo stuff, and I don't have Mario Kart, Splatoon. Even Smash right now is still kind of up in the air. And so it's...
About whether you're going to get it or not?
Yeah. And even if I
Really?
do, I guess the question is, am I going to play it online? Because for me personally, like, I've been shifting away from online stuff. I've found that dealing with other people online gaming is not always the most enjoyable thing. And I've been getting a lot more satisfaction out of gaming just by playing things by myself. So I guess it's probably not really marketed towards me anyway. But just coming from someone who does this sort of service on other platforms, like, I think I will probably be sticking with those other platforms.
So basically, there's just not enough to compel you to need online right now on Nintendo?
Pretty much. I mean, there's definitely room down the line if they bring more games to the service, or maybe Super Nintendo or whatever. But currently, there isn't really much of a reason for me to continue with it.
All right, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm definitely more of a local multiplayer fan than I am an online player. But I know I'm going to want to go online and kick some butt and smash. So, yeah, at the moment, I don't have enough games that I play online that I truly need the service. But the NES library is nice, and to me, it's such a cheap service that I can't really complain about the content. Like you said, I really, 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 really want Super Nintendo games, but at the current price point, I don't really know if it's necessarily justified. I'm hoping that when they release Super Nintendo games, either they'll be free or maybe it'll just be like pay an extra like $2 a month or whatever to unlock that. But yeah, I got a family plan because I have a whole bunch of friends that I knew would want to do Nintendo Switch Online as well. So that's only $35 for the whole year, and you can add 8 people to your plan. So basically, I can just tell all my friends, hey, you can hop on my account, just give me $5, you're covered for the year, and then I don't have to pay anything because 7 friends, that's $35, that's the cost of it. So yeah, I agree that it's a little content bare at the moment, but personally, it's like, yeah, it doesn't really matter because I'm basically getting it for free. So. And I've been enjoying playing, I've played like the original Zelda, Super Mario Bros. 3, and a little of Tecmo Bowl since I got the library. How about you, Adam? What do you think of the service so far?
So I have a bit of mixed opinion on this so far. So
okay.
I subscribed this first day it came out. Obviously, it was a free trial first, and then I just re-upped when it ran out. So the NES library, fantastic. I love that they're giving out those free retro games. It's something people have been asking for since the Switch came out. Since the Switch was announced, people have been asking for those retro games. But I don't think that's the right way of going about it, and I still stand firm that Nintendo is making a mistake by locking it behind a paid subscription. I feel like if somebody just wanted to play Super Mario Bros. 3 on their Nintendo Switch and none of those other games, they should be able to pay the $5 to play Super Mario Bros. 3. But I still think it's a good service, and I still think it has a lot of room to grow. $20 a year is really low price for the stuff that they're offering. I think that Nintendo kind of gets a slightly decent pass on that because those other online services, they offer a lot. They offer like big AAA games free every month, but their services are also $60 a year.
Right.
So I still think, though, that Nintendo doesn't understand online quite just yet. The servers still aren't up to par, and I realize that it has some room to grow, and that maybe as time goes on with the paid servers, they'll be able to fix some connection issues, but Nintendo still doesn't have strong online presence, and there's still connection issues anytime you try to play any game online, Splatoon, Mario Kart, or anything. Anytime I try to play Mario Kart, it's just, I can usually get about a solid 10-15 minutes, and then I'll get a disconnect. So that's a little disappointing, especially when you're paying for the service. But like you guys were saying, more Super Nintendo, like more NES games coming later on, potentially Super Nintendo games after that, and maybe opening it up to more. Who knows? I think as they add more things to the service, I think it'll be more worth it.
Yeah, Nintendo's definitely lagged behind in terms of online quality for a little bit. You know, it's never really been the focus of Nintendo. They've been more about the couch co-op and the couch multiplayer, which, you know, again, I love that. But if you're going to start charging for an online service, then I agree. Yeah, you got to take that money and put it to good use and have stable servers. So
yeah, for sure. And well, let me just bring up the mobile app. Have you heard of anybody using that mobile app yet?
Not really, but I haven't asked around too much, I guess.
I fail to see the point behind it, and I think in my personal opinion, if you're going to be putting a mobile app out that its main functionality is for voice chat, I fail to see the point because you're using it on a phone, which could be used just to call your friends.
Yeah.
But
I remember all the memes when they first announced voice chat for Splatoon, and you needed, like, you know, an app and a phone and like a cable. It was just so convoluted.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. And I understand if the Switch can't multitask that, it's supposed to be a portable system, and I understand if it can't multitask those kind of programs, but I mean, there's got to be a better alternative somewhere.
So we did get a little bit of good news about Nintendo Switch Online this week. We talked before about how Nintendo wasn't really being clear in their answer. In their FAQs, they had the question, you know, will my cloud save data specifically be erased if my subscription ends? And Nintendo's wording was really vague. It basically implied that yes, it would, but they didn't give any kind of time frame. Like, is it going to go away right away, or a day later, or a week later, or what? So they finally came out this week and said that they will actually store your cloud saves for 6 months after your subscription runs out. So that's fine, frankly. Like, you know, if you let your online service lapse for more than 6 months, like, all you have to do is, you know, sign in once to re-access it again. So it's a little weird to me that they didn't come right out and say this right away. Kind of makes me think it wasn't the original plan, and then they saw the fan backlash and decided to, you know, set this in stone. But either way, the end result is good. I don't think there's anything to be too concerned about now when it comes to cloud saves on Switch.
I don't really have much to say on this topic. I've never been a cloud save person myself, but I mean, it's good for people who want it. They at least have a small grace period to re-up that, or at least get their save back. So. Yeah,
like I have a buddy that's right now in the other room playing my Switch, playing Zelda. So when he gets his, you know, thanks to cloud saves, he'll be able to just pop his save file off of my Switch and onto his. So that'll be nice.
As opposed to the alternative of transferring your entire system's data to hostile takeover of the new system.
Yeah, which is just a little absurd. So another story that came up, you know, Steven, you said you weren't super happy with the lineup in the NES store so far. Well, hackers have already found a way to upload ROM files to it and add more, so there you go. If you're unhappy with your selection, just, you know, add more. Now, obviously, we don't recommend doing this because, you know, Nintendo is going to catch wind and they're going to be very, very unhappy, and then some consoles are going to be banned from going online. But they are planning to add more. It looks like they're going to add about 3 more per week. And then data mining has sort of indicated that eventually we're going to be getting some kind of Super Nintendo app, whether it's bundled in with Nintendo Switch Online or not, we don't really know. But it does seem like it's on the way. And personally, I'd be happy if we just had an NES app, an SNES app, and then another one that's just like the whole Game Boy umbrella. So original Game Boy, Color, and Advance, just, you know, all the hit games off of that in one app. And then I'd be good. But yeah, this does kind of raise the question that we have every generation, which is, why is Nintendo taking this gold mine they have of classic IP and just slowly drip feeding it out when, you know, someone could just add 100 games to it in like an afternoon with, you know, a basic knowledge of programming.
Yeah, this is a business practice from Nintendo that drives me insane. The whole uh, 4 years that the Wii U was on the market, just little by little, it was maybe like 1 or 2 games a month, and it was like, here's the Super Mario Bros. You got it. You probably have it on like 6 other systems by now, but here's Super Mario Bros. And it's awesome.
Now you have it on 7 systems.
It's awesome that on the Wii U we finally got Earthbound, and on New Nintendo 3DS we got Earthbound, whereas they passed that on the Wii in North America. But there's just... We got to Nintendo 64 within the last, like, 2 years of the Wii U, and so we barely even scraped the surface on Nintendo 64 games, and that's just disappointing. So I was really hoping...
Hey, well, cross your fingers that means we just barely get into GameCube games on
right,
the Switch.
Right. That's what
Right.
I need.
Yeah, I think that would do it for me, is if they had N64 on GameCube, because I never had an N64 growing up. I still
really?
haven't had one. So there's a lot on there that I've been wanting to play and that I feel like I've missed out on, that I would love to be able to be like, hey, you know, now I can. And even with the GameCube, I think, if I recall, there was a guy who apparently had GameCube games running on Switch at one point. Maybe this was before it dropped. I mean, it's been a while. But I thought at one point there was a report stating that, yeah, the Switch is actually capable of running GameCube stuff. So if that is true, then it's like, where are they at?
Yeah, I would think it would definitely be possible. I mean, you know, we got like Wii releases on Wii U and everything, so yeah, I'm not sure when they plan to roll it out. We heard all kinds of rumors and rumblings and stuff, some from some reliable sources. I think it's possible that Nintendo has been rethinking a lot of their strategy with the launch of the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, and now trying out like this NES app. So I think it's possible that they had plans for GameCube releases and then kind of pumped the brakes and were like, yeah, let's maybe try a different format. So I really hope we see them sometime soon. Kind of losing faith that we'll see them before the end of the year, since they didn't make an appearance at E3. But yeah, to me, it's you're just missing out on some easy money if you don't put like Thousand Year Door on Switch in time for Luigi's Mansion 3 to come out. Or I'm sorry, I'm mixing my games up. But yeah, either way, the original Luigi's Mansion should be on Switch as well. But just there's all these classic GameCube games, you know, Melee and Super Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker. So yeah, there's a big library, and I think there's a whole lot of hunger from fans for it.
But Ben, why would you pay a small amount of money to play Luigi's Mansion on the Switch when you can pay $40 to play it on the 3DS?
Because, you know, I just love that low-resolution screen, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, another interesting topic when it comes to sort of classic games, I don't know if you guys have heard, but the console wars are back because we're getting the PlayStation Classic. Oof. And trademarks have suggested that we might be getting an N64 Classic as well. So, pick your sides.
You know what? PlayStation Classic is awesome. I think it's a huge mistake to not have a DualShock with the PlayStation Classic, though, because I cannot stand playing PlayStation games without the joysticks.
Yeah, that's been a pretty common sentiment that I've seen on Twitter since the announcement.
The big concern over the PlayStation Classic with me is the games lineup.
Mostly that we don't really know what it is.
Oh, exactly. They're saying that there's going to be 20 games, but we only know what 5 of them are. And so whatever the other 15 games are going to be, like, could make or break the entire thing for me. I mean, we're looking right now,
absolutely.
because I did the math. We're looking at about, for the NES Classic, we're looking at about $233 per game. The SNES Classic came out to be about $381 a game. But with the PlayStation Classic, because it's priced at $100, it'll be about $5 a game. And
right.
Given that it's significantly more expensive per game than its competitors, like, those games have got to be really solid, like, essential entries for me to justify getting it over one of Nintendo's offerings.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a little weird that they, you know, started taking pre-orders at $100 before revealing, you know, what you're paying for. So
it's gonna have to have some game that's worth a lot more than the system, or worth as much as the system, because when you get down to it, you can buy a backwards compatible PS3 and some PS1 games. You probably get around close to the same value.
Yeah, I think like Symphony of the Night would be like a really big one.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know if that's gonna happen. So
yeah, especially with them coming out with the Requiem bundle in
Yeah,
October.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, if I'm Nintendo, I come out with like the N64 Classic and I undercut it in price and put better games. But I don't know what their plans are. But I do expect to see an N64 Classic, maybe next year. Kind of seems like it's a little late in the year for them to announce it now, and they've already got the 2 other stocking stuffers. But maybe next year they kind of slow down on the older systems and start circulating the N64 Classic. All right, so if that's all we've got to say on that, I'm gonna go ahead and guess, Steven, you're probably pretty excited about the news that Ace Attorney is coming to Switch.
I am super stoked.
Steven's our resident Ace Attorney fanboy here at Gamnesia.
So, for those who haven't heard, earlier this week, Capcom announced that it was bringing the original Ace Attorney trilogy to the Switch, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam sometime early next year. And there really isn't a lot new to the games. They have updated the graphics a bit, and I noticed on the website there was like a slight quality of life addition to the investigation portion of the game that would be kind of cool. And so, like, personally, I'm really excited because I don't need to buy these games again, but I'm going to because,
of course.
I mean, 1, Switch, 2, I can get it on Xbox and now get achievements for them. So that's a big selling point for me. But I know a lot of people are very upset over it because they expected news on Ace Attorney 7. I think the bigger thing here, though, is why is Capcom bringing the trilogy multi-platform now? Because prior to this, it was strictly
it used to be Nintendo exclusive, right?
Right. So I have a couple theories. One could just be that they decided they were going to do it on Switch, and they're like, you know what, we're bringing it to Switch. Let's bring it to everything else as well. My second theory is that the anime, the second season of the anime, is starting up again next month. And so I'm wondering if maybe there's some connection to that. Maybe they're trying to build off the hype and get people excited for the anime, or realizing that the anime is going to reach an audience that may have never played the games and is trying to make them as available as possible. The downside to that is that Season 1 followed the first 2 games pretty closely, and I've heard that Season 2 is going to do the same thing with the third game, so it's kind of like, if you watch the anime, like, why bother playing the game? So I'm not too confident in that one. But I think my prevailing theory overall is that this is going to be an indication that they're just going to make them all multi-platform in the future.
You think so? That would kind of stink for Nintendo to lose that exclusive. I mean, I know it's not a huge seller, but they've got a bunch of those little sort of quirky exclusives that do well in Japan, and I think enough of them kind of add up.
I think Ace Attorney 7 has been confirmed for only Switch at this point, but it would make sense that if they are thinking about bringing it to other consoles, that this would present the perfect opportunity for them to reach out to their potential audience and catch them up on the story and the events of the early games before they do that.
Mm-hmm. Or even just test the waters to see if there's a market for 7 on the other platforms too.
Or that too, yeah. So I don't know, who knows, but either way, I'm very excited. I mean, I still kind of wish it was Ace Attorney 7 news, but I'll be fine playing through these again.
You'll live.
I'll live.
Yeah, a lot of people complain about the number of ports that are coming to Switch, but I say keep them coming, because, if you don't want to buy them, don't buy them. It's not like it's really taking away from, Nintendo's first-party budget for new games or anything. So if Capcom and Square Enix and all these other companies want to keep porting their old stuff to Switch, heck yeah, I'll play it on the go. And indies, too.
Me being among one of the people that complain about all the ports for Switch, but I will say that as far as Ace Attorney goes, I have been planning for a while to play them because I've gotten really into those kinds of games in the last couple of years. So this is a good opportunity for me to go ahead and enter that series.
Yeah, exactly, because there's a lot of people like you who never played it before. Switch is attracting a lot of either brand new fans to Switch or sort of lapsed fans who haven't, played a Nintendo console in a while. So yeah, I think it's good to bring franchises like that to Switch, especially if you can get, like, most of the core games together, like, in a bundle or released all at the same time, so that people can just get caught up on the franchise. Moving on, we had a little bit of Smash Bros. News this week. Unfortunately, none of it's on a particularly happy note. The first thing is Sakurai said in his latest Famitsu column that he's going to be slowing down on the Smash reveals, that he got a little trigger-happy after E3 and was just kind of, left and right reveals, but that we're slowing down a bit. But then again, he also originally said that there weren't going to be that many new characters in general, and then we got 5 big reveals in 2 months. So when Sakurai says slowing down, who knows what he means. I would still expect maybe 1 or 2 more reveals before the game launches in December. But, we probably won't be getting this 2 or 3 times a month, big new trailer, exciting new character kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that would be a reasonable rate. Certainly these reveals generate hype for the game, and we don't want to waste all of that now, especially given that it's coming out in December. We got 2 months yet before it comes out, so we want to make sure to try and space those big announcements out so the hype for the game kind of carries through. It's Smash, it's going to be hyped anyway, but this is the biggest game, and just to see what other characters, it's really going to keep people on the edge of their seats, I think. Although I'm also of the opinion that I would kind of prefer some things to be a secret. Maybe there's a
all the way till launch day?
Or after.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just just throw in some random secret character that, you just...
Oh, like an unlockable?
Yeah, just
win 100 matches or something?
Play a match, and just all of a sudden there's this brand new character that we've never heard of being in the game before. I think that would be really solid.
Yeah, that would be pretty impressive.
I think that'd be really awesome if they did something like that. I know they tried to with Super Smash Bros. For the 3DS, and then a couple of those characters ended up being leaked about a week before release. I think their approach to it this time, because I think they've already said that they're going to reveal all the characters before release date, so that's a little unfortunate, but I think that's probably in direct response to said leaks from last time. But I think that they should at least hang on until right up until release for at least the last one, if they have any more. And obviously we still know nothing about the secret mode, if spirits or if it...
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
the blurred out green icon.
Yeah. So there's still plenty that we don't know about it. We don't know if there's some new kind of single player mode, if it's going to be like a story mode, or if it's going to be something more akin to like Smash Run, or what it's going to be.
All right, so our other bit of Smash news this week is a little bit bittersweet. There was a Smash player named Chris Taylor who has unfortunately been battling cancer for the past 3 years, and he tried something like, I think, 6 different kinds of treatment, including like some really cutting-edge experimental stuff, and just unfortunately nothing was working at all. And back in July, doctors gave him about 3 to 6 months to live. And, he posted on social media that it was really kind of hard to see all these exciting new trailers for Smash Bros., knowing that there was a pretty good chance that he wouldn't live to see the release date. It was hard to see all of his friends getting excited for this game that he wouldn't get to play. And some of his friends and family, they were really touched by this, so they took to social media and did this big campaign basically to hopefully bring the story to Nintendo's attention, and they succeeded. And then a couple of Nintendo reps actually brought the E3 version of the game to his house, and he got to, have some friends over, and I think his brother, and they posted pictures of themselves playing. So it was a really heartwarming story. And then, unfortunately, I think around 2 days later, he ended up passing away. So Nintendo actually got there and fulfilled his dying wish, basically right at the last minute.
Yeah, and that's, one thing, just never underestimate the power of the gaming community. I know a lot of people give us crap over various things. I know some of us can get out there and get really extreme with it, and I get it. But I think a large portion of the general populace still kind of looks down on us. But then you hear stories like this, and it just makes you realize that, we're not all that bad. There are a lot of good people in the community who really care about not only their games, but about the other members of the community. And so just good on everyone for getting that story out and getting it to Nintendo. And of course, good on Nintendo for doing it, right? I mean, because they didn't have to.
Right. It kind of reminds me of like events like GDQ, always games done quick. They always just warm my heart to see the gaming community coming together and doing something really constructive for a good cause.
Oh yeah, very much so.
I think it's really awesome that Nintendo is able to do this for Chris. I'm glad that the gaming community pulled together to make Nintendo aware of it, and I'm glad he at least got to play the game before passing on. Yeah,
definitely. You could tell he was really happy. He and some friends took to social media and posted thank yous on like the Smash Bros Reddit and everything. So you can tell it really meant a lot to him, and he was able to go and surrounded by friends and family in the comfort of his home, and knowing that he was loved and cared about by the gaming community that was so important to him, and I think that's really special. So moving on to a slightly lighter note, there's a new record for the speed run of the original Super Mario Brothers, which if you haven't really followed that scene much, obviously that's a very old game. It's over 30 years old, and people have been speed running it competitively for a long time. And it was thought to be, almost perfectly mastered. And then this week it was totally destroyed. So, Steven, do you wanna talk about that a bit? I know you're really in touch with the speedrunning community.
Yeah, just for a bit of background for those who don't know about Super Mario Brothers speedruns, it's one of the most highly optimized runs in existence, and I mean you kind of mentioned that. There are, last I checked, like 733 times on the main category, the any percent leaderboard, 77 of which are within a 4-second window, anywhere from 4 minutes 56 seconds to 5 minutes. The top 127 fall under the threshold where you start counting milliseconds instead of seconds, so it's highly competitive, and any sort of improvement at all is generally considered to be a big accomplishment. But this just went above and beyond what we thought was going to happen. So first things first, Cosmic, the speedrunner who accomplished this, actually earlier in that night had tied the existing record, and then turned around and became the first person to break the sub 4 minute 56 second mark, ending with a time of 4 minutes 55 seconds and 913 milliseconds. And that was due to a shortcut in World 1-2 that saved about 35 milliseconds. I'm not going to get into all the details of speedrun, or the Mario Brothers speedrun stuff. There's a really good video on YouTube that I found by an account called Bismuth. It's called How Is This Speedrun Possible? Super Mario Brothers World Record Explained, that details all of this in a lot more depth, if you guys are interested in checking that out. The gist of it is that you can only improve times in Super Mario Brothers in increments of 35 milliseconds.
Is it just because of like the way the cycles work in the game?
Because of, I'm trying to remember the terminology. So there's a thing in Super Mario Brothers speedrunning that they term a frame rule. So we know of frames, like 60 frames per second and all that. It turns out, in the analogy used, and I think it was Darbian, who is a very popular and well-known speedrunner, former record holder, who made the analogy that at the end of every level, there's sort of a bus that takes you to the next level, and it leaves every 21 frames. And so if you miss it, even by a frame, then you have to wait until the next cycle goes. And it turns out that based on the frame rate at which the game runs, it comes out to be about 35 milliseconds. And so that's why you can only kind of improve your time by that, because it's just a matter of catching the next earliest bus.
Right, so if you're only ahead by, like, say, 20 milliseconds and then you get to the end of the level, it doesn't matter because you have to wait for it to catch up then?
Right. Like I said, the video does a lot better job at explaining it. It's technical, but at the same time very accessible. But one thing I thought was pretty outstanding, kind of stuck out to me from the video, is that according to the video, the theoretical human limit as to how fast you can go in Super Mario Brothers is 4 minutes, 55 seconds, and 496 milliseconds. So we're talking like half a second between the theoretical human limit and what was just accomplished the other night. There is, you can do the computer, there's a thing in speedrunning called tool-assisted speedruns, or TAS for short. And I think the theoretical limit for the TAS is somewhere in the 4-minute 54 range. But yeah, we're inching ever so closer to that theoretical human limit, and it's just insane that all the stuff, all the frame perfect, pixel perfect tricks that Cosmic had to go through.
You press a button, a 60th of a second too late, and it's thrown off your whole time. It's really incredible. Like I imagine like they must play it like so many thousands of times that it's just like muscle memory to a certain extent. But it's really fantastic to watch them go, especially during events like GDQ, where you can see like a 2-person or 4-person race and see just how close they get, you know? So yeah, if you guys haven't spent a lot of time looking into the speedrunning community, GDQ is always a great event for that. You know, they have some of the best people from around the world compete in various events, and then they raise money for charities like Doctors Without Borders and the Prevent Cancer Foundation? Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So awesome event if you want to get into speedrunning.
Very much so.
So we're going to get to our discussion segment on Pokemon Let's Go in just a minute here, but I'm afraid we have one more story we have to get to first.
This had to be on the week I was on the show, too.
Yeah, it did. I'm regretting that already. So on our first episode, we had Alex talk a little bit about the deepest lore of Mario, where in the Switch ports of the Mario and Luigi U, Toadette can collect the Super Crown and turn into Peachette. And Alex began asking questions like, okay, so are all the humanoids just, like, Toads and Toadettes that discovered magical crowns and turned into, like, you know, Peach or Mario? Like, how does this work? Is that how we choose the royal family? Just, like, whatever Toad, like, battles for the crown? Well, the internet provided some answers, and we should have never asked those questions. If you aren't yet familiar with Bowsette, it's a fan-made character where someone imagined what would happen if Bowser got the Super Crown, and what we got was a sort of a gothic version of Peach with like a tail and horns and breathing fire, and now it's just everywhere. It's everywhere on the internet, and you can't avoid it no matter how hard you try.
And now there's a Peach version of every single Mushroom Kingdom imaginable.
Yes, oh, yeah. I'm a fan of the Goombat. That one was actually pretty
I haven't
cute,
seen that one, actually.
I think we might have posted it on our Facebook, but if not, I'm sure I could find it and send it to you. She's just kind of like, she's got her like hands stuffed in her pockets, and she's just got kind of like this angry look on her face. She's kind of adorable. But I've also seen Chain Chompette and Thwompette and Booette, and
I think
it's all over the place.
One of the best things I've seen to come from this, there's a DeviantArt account known as the Burgie Man. And they put out a comic, and it started off with Mario, Peach, and Bowser like discussing the evils that the crown has brought, and then they wind up going to destroy it and throw it in the lava. But because it's a magical crown, the lava all of a sudden transforms into like this fire princess.
Yeah, that's a pretty good explanation of what's going on. No matter how hard we try to throw the Super Crown away, it just turns into something else.
But yeah, everyone's running with it. I wound up buying a shirt today, actually, that had a Bowsette art on it.
Already? Wow.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. I also saw a video.
I've been amazed by how many cosplayers have already made outfits and taken them to cons.
Oh yeah. I also saw one of the coolest things I saw, and kind of one of the more extreme measures, is that I saw somebody had commissioned someone to make a Super Mario 64 mod where you play as Bowsette. And the funny thing about this is that she can shoot fireballs, but she destroys everything. You shoot a fireball at the door is just gone. Like, you can't even load the next area. But things like pipes, the pipes to get into the Bowser fights, gone. Switches, gone. Bowser himself, gone. Like, you can't actually beat the game because you hit Bowser once and he just disappears.
Well, we don't need Bowser anymore. We have Bowsette. Why would we ever need Bowser?
True.
He's non-canon now. So that's the last character that's going to be revealed for Smash. They're going to announce that Bowsette is canon, and that's how we're going to find out.
Oh man, I hope
they
so.
drop her in Smash.
If that was the thing, like, I would go pre-order it, like, 5 minutes ago.
By far my favorite thing to come out of this is how people have repurposed that parental restrictions video from Nintendo.
Yes.
With Bowser and Bowser Jr. And Bowser runs up to Bowser Jr. to cover his eyes from all the Bowsette stuff.
Yeah, it's probably necessary. Protect the youth.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of, like, safe pictures, but with this kind of thing, you can expect that there's a lot out there that is not appropriate.
Oh, yeah.
For, like,
of course.
anyone.
Most of it out there is not appropriate.
Yeah, most.
Yeah, so
Especially for
if you haven't seen it and are going to look for it, be extremely careful. Like, be warned.
Google safe search.
Yes, very.
Okay. Well, if we're ready to just move on from the best thing the fan community has ever created, we can get on to our discussion topic for the week.
Oh yeah, I don't want to touch this anymore.
I don't know if I'll ever get past it, honestly, but we can go on.
Okay, so for this week's discussion segment, we're going to dive into, like I said, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the upcoming games on Nintendo Switch. So Game Freak will be dropping those in a little less than 2 months. And if you haven't been following them super closely, they're sort of HD remakes of Pokemon Yellow, or the sort of red, blue, yellow generation in general. But there's been some pretty major changes to the game mechanics. It essentially blends traditional Pokemon gameplay together with some elements of Pokemon Go to create a new formula that's kind of halfway in between. And this is especially true when it comes to catching wild Pokemon. So, for example, they appear on the overworld map instead of spawning randomly, and then you don't battle them. You just do the sort of Go-style catching where you can use candies on them, or you can just throw a Pokeball, but you don't actually battle them and lower their health before catching them. So it's sort of a halfway point between the traditional Pokemon we know, and then it's reaching out a little bit to Pokemon Go players with these mechanics that they'll be familiar with, so that it can kind of ease them into the traditional Pokemon experience. And I'd say the internet is fairly divided about whether the end result is good or bad with this. And so are we at Gamnesia, actually. So the reason, actually, that I assembled the three of us together for this specific episode is because we all kind of have different opinions on this. So we're just going to go over some of our pros and cons and have a little back and forth. So for starters, I think we'll just go in order of most excited to least excited and just give our quick 10-second hot takes. So I'll kick off and just say I'm pretty excited for it. I'm a little concerned about a few things just because of previous Pokemon games and problems that I've had with some of them that I hope they shed. But overall, I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm excited to see Game Freak willing to sort of try new things and mix things up a little bit. And mostly, I'm just riding this huge wave of nostalgia right now, and I can't wait to get back to Kanto. But I'll kick it over to you guys now. We'll start with you, Adam. How are you feeling about it?
I think there's things that I like about this game. There are some neat ideas in here, but Nintendo hasn't quite sold me on the concept for it personally. So there's some neat things in here that I think some younger fans, some newer fans will like in here, and I understand the purpose of doing that is to bring in newer fans, but I'm not entirely sure that this game is meant for me. So
okay,
it's a little hard to get excited about it, even though they're doing some cool things in it.
All right, Steven, I know you have some strong opinions, so lay them on us.
Yeah, I actually have written in my notes for this section, no, kill it with Fire Blast.
That's an opinion.
I am also kind of riding the nostalgia train here, but unlike you, Ben, I think that this is completely bad for the franchise. I don't like this one bit. It's not the Pokemon I know. It's not the Pokemon I wanted. And I don't think it'll wind up being as good as people think it will.
When you said it's not the Pokemon I know, I just kind of pictured you on a rocking chair with your shotgun, but...
I also have in here that I am potentially being a crotchety old man about this.
Yay! Glad we're on the same page.
Dang kids need to get away from my Pokemon.
Get off my lawn.
When I was a kid, there was only 151, and that's how we liked it. Of course, that's kind of what they're doing in Let's Go. You know, they're going back to the original Kanto-only Pokemon, but they're also tossing in their Alolan forms, as well as, obviously, the new Pokemon that was just revealed in Pokemon Go. So there'll be a little more than 151, but they are going back to sort of, since they're going back to Kanto, they're trying to keep it with Pokemon that I think, old fans of the series are familiar with. Because I think, they've got a two-pronged approach with this. They're trying to reach out to people that haven't played since Gen 1. Because, there's a lot of those. Gen 1 sold, I don't know, some ridiculous amount, like 40 million copies total, and then no other generation since has been, quite that successful. They've all been very successful, but not quite on that level. So, there's a lot of people that play Pokemon, maybe Gen 1, maybe Gen 2, and then after that kind of faded away. So they're reaching out to those people that, want to go back to Kanto and, don't want to have to memorize 800 Pokemon when they do it. And then, of course, they're also very obviously, both with the name and the gameplay mechanics, reaching out to Pokemon Go players, saying, hey, we want you to experience what it's like to travel around a Pokemon region and battle actual gym owners, not just, other random people. And we think Kanto is the best place to start because that's where it all started. But, we'll meet you halfway. We'll simplify, the catching process and some of that, and we'll stick some other Pokemon Go stuff in here so it feels a little bit more familiar. So yeah, for me, I've been playing Pokemon Go a lot lately. Obviously, I still prefer traditional Pokemon games, but just because I've been playing Pokemon Go to exercise, really, it's, I take walks, it helps me sleep. But because of that, I'm familiar enough with the Go gameplay that I'm not going to be too upset about, some of the features that have been sort of rolled back to simplify things. But I'm mostly excited as an old fan of the series to see Kanto in HD. It's everything that we've seen from the trailers and from my hands-on time with the game at E3 is just beautiful. And to me, it's like the game I imagined that I was playing as a little kid. And I think that a lot of people are going to have similar sentiments.
I actually, I'm on the other end of that, actually. That's one of the reasons I am a little more skeptical about the game, is because of limiting it to just Kanto. I have a little bit of an issue with that, and I think that's mainly because of my relationship with the series. Gen 1 to me was the anime, and that was all I knew growing up. I never actually played the games until Platinum, so I was a little bit of a late bloomer as far as Pokemon RPGs go. So to me, my first Pokedex centered around about 480 Pokemon. So 151 to me is just kind of like, oh, we're going backwards.
You're just downsizing a bit.
Yeah. So it feels a little bit weird, but then there are some other things that they're introducing, and it's like, oh, trainers can carry a mobile PC with them now, and they can swap out Pokemon at any time. That's genius.
Yeah, that's super convenient.
Like, why didn't we do that before? But, like, they're introducing cool features like that in what is essentially a spin-off game, and it's a little frustrating from the outside when I know they're working on a brand new hardcore RPG for Pokemon fans. I really hope that they include features like that fans have been asking for a long time. Just to make the quality of life of Pokemon a lot better. They did a lot of good improvements in Sun and Moon, getting rid of those pesky HMs. But
yeah, and that's being carried over into Let's Go with the what is it called? Secret abilities or something like that. Secret techniques.
Yeah, and
so your starter Pikachu and Eevee can like hop on a surfboard to surf or pull out some balloons to fly, so that you don't have to carry an HM slave around.
And those are the things I really like about Let's Go, is making all those quality of life things better. So
yeah,
those things,
and that's stuff that I think will probably carry over into the 2019 core RPG.
I hope so.
I think most of these sort of Go similar mechanics probably won't.
Right.
Maybe seeing Pokemon on the overworld map will. I'm not sure what they'll do about that, but yeah, and any of this stuff that's just not simplifying the gameplay, but just making it more like user friendly and not frustrating, like the mobile PC.
Yeah.
That I would expect to see carry over personally. But Game Freak could prove me wrong, I guess. But it might also depend on how well these new features are received in Let's Go.
Right.
Well, I think to counter Ben's point earlier, where Nintendo and Game Freak are really trying to capture two audiences here, I don't think it's going to work out that well. For instance, if I wanted to play Pokemon Go, I would play Pokemon Go. It's a free mobile app that I can just pull up and go. Here I have to carry a Switch with me, and I might not even have a Switch. So for those who don't, I mean, you're looking at least a $360 investment if you don't get the Pokeball Plus, upwards of $400 if you do. So it's going to be a very expensive investment for these people who may just want to catch Pokemon. I also think that a lot of the Pokemon Go community is made up of casual players who may like Pokemon Go for its simplicity and not having to worry about all these extra mechanics like, actual battles and type advantages and stuff like that. I have a few friends who played Pokemon Go when it first came out, never touched a Pokemon game in their life, and still wouldn't.
Right.
Played Pokemon Go just because it was, like you said, good for walks and stuff, but it was so easy and simple to do. On the flip side of that, I think Nintendo and Game Freak are actually probably more isolating the people who like Pokemon. If I want to play Pokemon, I want to play Pokemon. I don't want to play Pokemon Go. So that means I want the battles. I don't want all this extra crap on top of it. I think what I would have rather had is a legitimate, straight up remake of Gen 1 on Switch. So that way I could play it in HD, but on a TV or on a Switch. None of this extra Pokemon stuff. None of this Pokemon Go.
Is it fair to say that your main objection then is just that they chose the Gen 1 remake to make into this sort of hybrid project, and that they should have made it the hybrid game like its own separate thing that doesn't taint the memory of Gen 1? Or do you just think Let's Go shouldn't exist altogether?
I'm not really sure, honestly. Now that you put it like that, I don't think I would be opposed to making this its own thing. I think a lot of my... I guess that would be accurate. A lot of my main objections to this is that they had a chance to redo Gen 1 and stay true to Gen 1, except now they're coming in and mucking it all up.
Yeah, I could see that to a certain extent. I guess maybe they feel like people already have Fire Red if they just want kind of like a straight Gen 1 port or remake, but my only problem with that is that unfortunately Fire Red and Leaf Green were the last games before they went in and changed how physical and special attacks work, and that significantly changes battle strategy. And, that's one of my favorite parts of Pokemon is competitive battling. I like to build teams on Smogon and that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm really glad that, now I get Kanto in HD with modern battle mechanics. But yeah, I could see if you were really hoping for a straight port of Gen 1, I could see why that would be a little disappointing. But to your point about about Go and Go players and everything, definitely, I'll say that, the vast majority of Go players probably will not buy this. But there's 800 million people that have downloaded Go and something like 70 million people that are still active. So even if you just get a small, very small percentage of those people, that could still be millions of first-time, core Pokemon buyers. That there's potentially millions of players that play Go that will buy Let's Go, and it'll be their first Pokemon experience outside of Go. Even if 99% don't, I think Game Freak still can pull in a few million new fans, and maybe those new fans stick around, maybe they don't. But I think it's a smart move to reach out for them. And then, like you said, fans of core Pokemon games just want their core Pokemon game, which is why I think that Junichi Masuda was very wise to basically announce Let's Go and go, but wait, there's more. We have a normal game coming in 2019. So I think he anticipated that exact sort of backlash from the veteran fans that you talked about, and he was ready with an answer. So to me, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people who say this game is not for me, and that's fine. But as a longtime Pokemon fan, it is for me, and I think for a lot of Go fans, it will be for them too, even if they've never played a Pokemon game before.
I mean, yeah, you're talking about a man who's been dealing with Gen 1ers for decades now, so I'm pretty sure he's used to that sort of reaction from Pokemon fans. But I do agree with Steven that there is definitely a price barrier on Let's Go. The problem being is that a lot of people kind of see this as an inferior version of Red and Blue, and I think people would be more open to it if it wasn't stamped with a $60 price tag, and even less opposed to it if the one that comes with the peripheral isn't stamped with a $100 price tag. Those numbers are kind of off-putting to a lot of people, especially more casual fans.
I do have an issue with the Pokeball pricing, and from what I've seen, I believe they said the tech in it is actually even more precise than the Switch HD Rumble. So, okay, that makes sense then that it would be so expensive, but my question is, why? Do we really need a Pokeball accessory that's more precise than HD Rumble? I feel like, we could get across the feeling of a Pokemon shaking in your hand without it being like a $50 piece of tech.
Yeah.
That seems to me like going a bit above and beyond the call when like a $20 accessory would have done.
I mean, because when Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, they had the Pokewalker, which honestly, that tech would have been just fine for a game like this. And it only stamped the price up about $10.
And I just watched a Did You Know Gaming video today about Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and they mentioned that when the Walker came out, like, they did some tests with it against top-ranked pedometers, and it was actually one of the most accurate pedometers in the world.
It's crazy.
Which is pretty insane. But, yeah, so I agree, $100 for game plus accessory is a bit much when they're really promoting the accessory as like the best way to play. The good news for me though is like, I already have a Switch, so I don't look at this as a $300 investment. But if you're just a mobile game player who obviously does not own a Switch, then yeah, this is a pretty high barrier to get over in terms of price. But I think Switch has a good enough lineup that, as long as Nintendo is smart about their marketing, they can really convince, these Go players, you're buying it for this big Pokemon experience, but look at all these other great games you can get, from the same company, that offers the same quality. And especially when you look at, they have the Animal Crossing mobile app, and then they announced Animal Crossing game coming out. So, it's some of it's going to hinge on how good of a job Nintendo does at just in general telling their mobile fans, look, if you buy a Switch, you can upgrade to way cooler versions of the games you already have on your phone.
Yeah. It's interesting, before we started, I was watching some gameplay footage for Let's Go from EGX. That just came out probably about a day ago. And they kept alluding back to the Pokemon anime, which is very interesting to me that they're trying to capitalize off of that crowd, considering that was my main source of Pokemon knowledge growing up. You think it'd appeal to me more, but it just doesn't. But they kept alluding to the fact that, oh, look, it's the shrunken version of the Pokeball from the anime. That's something only the anime does. And we're throwing it just like Ash would in the anime, and we're turning around our baseball caps. And I'm like, okay, but... What?
Yeah, I wonder if they're kind of pushing that angle because, they just did like the deal with Twitch where Twitch is streaming like the whole anime basically over the next few months.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe the anime is really popular. Something's obviously clicked if it's still going.
Yeah, and then they've also, kind of remade some of the earlier movies, and a little while back we got that like Red and Blue like anime miniseries. So they've been banking a lot on the sort of like Gen 1, Gen 2 nostalgia recently. And, Pokemon Go is obviously a big part of that since it launched with just the original 151 and then, instantly became the biggest mobile game in the world. So, yeah, I think they've been banking pretty hard on the Gen 1 nostalgia for a few years now. And obviously, the first couple seasons of the anime with Ash and Brock and Misty that everybody remembers, that ties into that a lot.
I'm also not a fan. It was kind of mentioned earlier that they're making a couple of changes to the game based on prior gens. I'm also not a fan of that. I think since Pokemon X and Y, the series has become very handholdy.
Yeah, definitely.
And become like too easy. I have a lot of other criticisms with it, but that's kind of the main one. And I think this is just exacerbating that even further. So, for instance, one thing I really don't like is the gym requirements. So, basically, in order to get into a gym, you're going to have to meet some sort of arbitrary requirement. So, the example we've seen so far is that Brock's gym actually requires you to have a water or grass type Pokemon in your party in order to get in, which I get, right? You're trying to introduce players to the idea of type advantage, and given that Brock is a rock type gym, grass and water is a really good choice.
Well, you're blowing my mind. I didn't know any of this.
The silly thing to me, though, is that it's a one-time thing. I can just put a grass type party or a grass type Pokemon in my party, meet that requirement, and then just swap them out like nothing happened. So
I'm glad when they clarified that you could do that. It's a little goofy, for veteran players that are, going to go grab their Bellsprout or whatever and then immediately bench it. But, I'm glad that they don't make you actually fight Brock with a grass or water type. To me, that would become too handholdy. It's still a little bit of a weird change. I don't think it was necessary, but once I learned that you can swap it out, it no longer bothered me.
I think it's a lot more prevalent in this, because those things were always in the original games. If you remember going into the gyms, even back in Gen 1, you had that guy at the beginning of the gym who kind of gave you an overview, like, oh, Brock uses rock type. It's like, but that was completely optional.
Let's go, future champ.
Yeah, but it was completely optional, and now it's forcing it in your, it's just putting it right there in your face. And even as far as, maybe there's other requirements, so maybe you might have to have a Pokemon of a certain level to, beat the gym, but again, it's a completely arbitrary thing that you just have to do once and then it's done, so what's the point? But also, even that's kind of in the game because Pokemon get stronger as you progress, and so if you're in an area that is consistently throwing you level 30 and 40 Pokemon, you'd think that most people would probably have level 30, 40 Pokemon in there. So
it just kind of seems a little redundant.
On the topic of the gym requirements, I do feel like that is a little too handholdy still, just because I feel like it's better. Because when I played my first game, I never talked to that guy at the entrance, and shame on me for that. But, I'd go into a gym and I'd get my butt handed to me, and then I'd be like, I'd go in again and again and again, and it'd keep happening, and I'd be like, what's wrong? Well, Adam, you gotta catch Pokemon that are strong against the gym leader. So, learning that the hard way made me a better player.
Mm-hmm.
So, everyone has a different view on this. Should the game come out and just tell you, or should you learn it through experience and get frustrated? Some people don't like to get frustrated, and I get that.
Yeah.
But, it's just sort of trying to find this balance between, older gamers that are used to those sort of non-existent tutorials and newer gamers who are used to being kind of guided through the rules.
Right, and that was actually my biggest complaint about Sun and Moon, and therefore my biggest concern about Let's Go, that I've sort of yet to see how it's going to pan out, is that in Sun and Moon, oh my god, the first island was unbearable. Once I got into the core of the gameplay, I loved Sun and Moon. But I was so miserable on the first island because I couldn't take 10 steps without someone running up to me and giving me a tutorial. And almost all of it was stuff I already knew. And obviously there's lots of new players that won't, know these things. But to me at this point, 7.5 gens into Pokemon, they should always give you the I already know this, skip the tutorial option. Because I almost quit playing Sun because every 10 steps or so, either someone would run up and trigger a cutscene, which is fine, but, I'm fine with cutscenes, but the 3DS hardware is inferior, so, there'd be, little bits of loading before and after the cutscene and everything, and it would slow down the gameplay, and then it would be then I'd take another 10 steps, and then it's a tutorial, and then another 10 steps, and it's a cutscene, and then another 10 steps, and it's a tutorial, and I'm just like, oh my god, just let me play the game already!
It was
so
padded out,
And once you get past the first island, it gets so much better. So that's just my concern, is that Let's Go will have a similar problem where they kind of assume there's all these new Go players that aren't used to the mechanics, so we got to have a tutorial every 10 steps. And I understand the need for that, but just please give me a skip tutorial option every time you do that.
It's really weird because the 3DS almost has kind of a whiplash with Pokemon games and how their pacing works. X and Y kind of had a longish tutorial too. It was maybe... if I remember right, probably about half an hour-ish not too invasive, but then we got the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, and they mostly left that game intact, and so the pacing is just, you're just in it, kind of. There's no, like, super long tutorial. It's maybe, like, 10-15 minutes. But then we got Sun and Moon, which had hours of that. and it's crazy to me because I want to like Sun and Moon more than the other 3DS games because it made so many quality of life improvements to the game, but I still hold that the best 3DS games for Pokemon were the Ruby and Sapphire remakes, and that kind of speaks something for your series when your remakes are better than your core games.
Are you saying that despite having too much water, that they were good?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so another change that I'm not super thrilled about, but totally understand, is that they announced pretty recently Pokemon won't have special abilities or hold items in Let's Go. And, that's another thing where I liked it because both of those things added extra depth to competitive battling and to strategy. And, you don't know if this Charizard you're coming up against has, like, a Mega Stone or a Choice Band or whatever. So that extra level of depth won't be available in Let's Go. But again, at the same time, this is a remake of Gen 1, which didn't have any of those things. And it's reaching out to Go players, which, also don't have access to those kind of things. So I think it's an okay middle ground to strike, where they kept the sort of they kept the way that physical and special attacks were redefined in Gen 4, so that the core of the battle remains the same, but then they just stripped away some of the more complex features to make it simplified, which I think is a fair compromise. But I will definitely enjoy the battling much more, I'm sure, in the 2019 game when they bring back some of those core mechanics.
So they're getting rid of some of the more complex features, but they're keeping Mega Evolutions?
Yes, they are.
Seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't quite get that. And Steven, I know you probably have a rant about Mega Evolutions. I personally like them, but I don't necessarily know that they need to be in this game, especially when they're not in Go. Seems like kind of a weird choice to me. I'm not complaining. It's just weird.
I liked Mega Evolutions more than Z moves.
I did too.
I didn't like either of them, honestly. Like, I will say, some of the Pokemon, some of the Mega Pokemon, have really cool designs. Gengar and Alakazam stick out in my mind as being some of my personal favorites. And Kangaskhan, because, like, the little baby got to get out of the pouch finally. Like, who doesn't like
right?
that? I don't like the idea in general. I would have much preferred, like, a legitimate, permanent evolutionary stage. I don't know how well that would work, of course, but it seems to me like if you're going to go that extra step and be like, oh yeah, we can quote-unquote evolve for like 5 turns, like just make it a permanent thing.
Yeah, I kind of liked that Mega Evolutions made it so that certain Pokemon that were popular but maybe not competitively viable could do so, but then also because they made it, a hold item instead of like a permanent thing, it also allows strategy. Like, for example, with Caesar, like, he's competitively viable both as a Mega and as a non-Mega with, completely different items. So when you see one thrown out onto the field, you don't know if that thing is going to have a Choice Band or a Mega Stone, and that'll kind of change how you approach it. So again, I like it for what it adds to strategy, but there are a few Megas here and there that I thought were unnecessary. And, there were some Pokemon that were already in the overused, top-tier category that got Mega Evolutions. And I'm just like, wow, really? Did they need to be more powerful? But yeah, overall, I like Megas. I don't know if they're necessarily a good fit for this game.
Yeah, and then you always get the Pokemon that, like, you're like, why did they get a Mega in the first place? Like, Audino?
Yeah.
Like, what? Like,
yeah, that one's weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anyone is really calling for a Mega Audino.
Yeah, especially since that generation in particular is kind of so looked down upon as far as popularity of Pokemon goes.
So the only other note I really had here on Pokemon Let's Go is, depending on how it performs, Junichi Masuda has hinted that it could become its sort of own spin-off series, in which case you would have this sort of continual pipeline between Pokemon Go and core Pokemon games where, new fans come into Go because it's free, and then if they get really, the 1% of them that get really, really, really hooked will go, all right, maybe I'll spend a little money and try this, new and improved version of it on Switch, and then, hopefully they're eventually brought into the fold and become core Pokemon players. So, and of course, that depends entirely on how well these Let's Go games sell. Which, Steven, to an earlier point that you made about how you're not sure if they're going to be able to successfully cater to either the old or new crowd by trying to reach them both. I would point to the fact that as soon as the games were announced, they were sold out on Amazon for like 2 weeks straight. So we haven't exactly seen hard numbers yet, but I have a feeling these games are going to sell at least as well as what we saw from the average Pokemon generation on 3DS. I think these will sell like in the 10 to 15 million range, maybe more.
I'm going to reiterate, I guess, what you got out of me earlier, and say that if this is going to go forward and become a legitimate thing, I would much rather keep it a separate thing. Don't start messing with prior gens like this. Instead, craft some other story, some other region, or something like... I mean, plenty of Pokemon games have done it before. I mean, you had Mystery Dungeon, you had Ranger, that were set in the Pokemon universe that were perfectly, in my mind at least, perfectly good spin-offs. I think they could do the same thing here. I'm still not going to buy it, but I would be a lot happier if that's the route.
You'd respect it more.
Right.
I'd probably be a little bit miffed if they gave the Let's Go treatment to Gen 4, just because I really loved Gen 4, and it's been a long, long time since I've played it, so I think it would be really great to just play a true Gen 4 remake.
Yeah.
So yeah, I might find it a little weird to play Gen 4 with the simplified mechanics.
The other point is I'm concerned that we're going to get, like, Call of Duty syndrome here, where we're going to start seeing these games extremely frequently, and that maybe some team from the core game is going to be pulled off of the core game to work on Let's Go. It's like what happened with Sonic 06, right? They were working on this game, and then I'm not saying it's going to be that bad, but the idea that
you heard it here, guys. Let's Go is the new Sonic 06.
It may be in my heart, but but I'm just concerned that they're going to pull staff from the core games to focus on Let's Go, and it's going to drop the quality of the core games more than they have been over the past couple of years. Because I'm pining for, like, a legitimately good Pokemon game. Like, in the vein of, like, Gen 2 or 3.
Right. Oh, well, I was with you when you said 2, but you said or 3, and then you lost me.
2 was the gold standard. Like,
yeah, I love Gen 2 as well.
But I very much had a soft spot for 3 as well. But it's just been going downhill since X and Y. Like, I still have not finished X and Y. You mentioned not, enjoying Sun and Moon a lot more after the first island. I'm never going to get there, because I got to the first island and was so peeved at what Pokemon had become that I just quit flat out.
Oh, just get past the first island, get yourself a Mudbray, and it's all better from there. It is tough, though. It's a tough sell to tell someone just trudge through, like, 6 hours of annoying gameplay and then it gets good,
I mean, for what it's worth, I'm through Isle 1, so, like, if I ever pick it up again, at least I'm there. And now that we've talked about it, I might give it another chance at some point. But I'm just... Because Pokemon is a very near and dear franchise to me, both game-wise and anime-wise. And I really do not like the feeling of something that I hold so close to my heart, perceiving that to be such a... I don't want to say low quality, but it's just not living up to my expectations. Like, right. Pokemon's doing it. Zelda is starting to do that. I'm not going to get into that because it's a whole nother thing.
That is a whole other debate.
We will be here for like a week.
Yeah, but Steven is not a fan of Breath of the Wild, but we like him anyway.
I just really want either like a legitimate, straight-up remake or something in the vein of the older games.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hate to disappoint, but you can probably expect Pokemon Let's Go Meryl sometime in 2020.
It's Pikachu, thank you very much.
Oh, right. How could I forget?
I will say this, what I would like to see that would make me very happy is do like a multi-pack, right? Like Mega Man, for instance, has done this very well recently, where they just put out a disc or a download, and it's got like 5 or 6 games on it. Do that with the older Pokemon, right? Put it on one cartridge, or do a download or something, and just you can pick from like Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 in their original forms, or maybe slightly remastered or something. Like I could live off of that. I would be perfectly happy.
Yeah, I think they sort of reached out to the audience with the 3DS releases of Gen 1 and 2, but yeah, it's kind of a similar situation with like the NES library, where I think Nintendo would rather trickle them out than just drop them all at once for whatever reason. So we just kind of have to deal with it, unfortunately.
I'll even settle for a Gen 4 remake.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited for the possibility of a Gen 4 remake. So hopefully that's something we can look forward to maybe in 2020.
You know, while we're talking about hopes and dreams, it was rumored out for a while, and I don't know if they're really going to do this. I'd love for them to do it, but I'd like to see some sort of, like, giant Pokemon World game on console where they combine everything together. Like,
yeah, that's been rumored a lot, but unfortunately I don't know if there's ever been much substance behind it. You know, but we can dream. Like you said, it's hopes and dreams time.
Yes.
So. All right. Well, I think that does it for our second episode of Switched On. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, I am at Aramgard. And Steven?
I am at Red Rollins Yum.
And Adam?
I am at Adam L. Sherrill.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we hope to see you again soon with another episode.